Welcome. Kevin, this is so fun. I'm glad Gio invited you on. Kevin is a marketing advisor and educator and a marketing consultant at Everspaces. That's a long title. Tell us the short version of what you do,
Sure. Well, thank you, Gio,
or
for
the long
inviting me. Thank you,
version.
Jamie, for having me too. Yeah,
Of
really, I
course.
just help Coworking Spaces make smart marketing decisions, hopefully smart ones, and ultimately get more members and help keep them full. I think marketing is a dynamic, ever-changing, somewhat technical, somewhat creative field, and if you're not a full-time marketer, it's hard to know where the landmines are, who to help you avoid them, like what to work on, what not to work on. So my main job is to help clients allocate the resources most effectively, measure the results, double down on what's working, and ultimately build a more profitable business. It's a goal.
I love it. So Gio and I were
Well,
texting about you, and I was like, he did a bunch of work for the GWA years ago. Like, you were so just helpful and, all in on, trying to set us up for success. I can't remember though. How did you get into the co-working business? I remember the
Oh,
story about you and Taylor at the dog park, but I can't remember your origin
okay.
story. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, it's Kane Wilmot. He's responsible for bringing me into this fine world. And so he was, as I say, my first victim in the co-working kind of world back in about 2017 or so, maybe even earlier than that. I think I built them a website and then built them another one, and I was doing marketing for them. And then after a period of time, I'm like, what if I specialized in this world? Would that be like, is that a good idea, a bad idea? I was starting to consult as opposed to running my agency. And he's like, I think it's a great idea. In typical Kane fashion, if anyone who knows him, he's like, this is great. You can get ideas, you can bring it back to us, you can share stuff. And he was super excited. He introduced me to you as one of the first people he introduced me to. And I was like, hey, Jamie, is this a dumb idea? Like, thanks for taking time. And you were like, no, I think it's great too. And then so you two enabled me, and here I am today. Many years
Okay.
I
and
love
stuff.
it that people call us and ask us if it's a dumb idea. Someone else called
Yeah.
me yesterday and they asked me that question. I'm like, what makes me the right person to call and ask if this is a good idea? Trying to
Turned out to
remember
be a
who it
great
was.
idea. Thankfully, I did it. I'm excited. I'm happy about that decision, and it's put me on a long path. That's helped really grow my career. I've changed as a person and a marketer since getting into the world. So it's funny how these
Well, let's
things
even go a
happen.
step before that. And what were you doing before? How did you get even? I mean, what's your actual background, not just in co-working, but
Yeah, good question. So like I started, if you want to go all the way back, I started building websites as a teenager in the early 2000s as a hobby. So I was coding them with HTML by hand. And then so
well,
it turned into me building websites for family and friends. And then I'm like, I got sick of that. And so I built a little landing page. I'm like, look, I'm a business now, so things cost money. That was like 2006 or something. I was doing like graphics and logos, and then people's social media, their websites. And then, over the years, my freelance business turned into a full-time gig, but it was many years until that happened. And so, yeah, I ran an agency for a while and then transitioned into consulting in about 2016, around the time I was doing that with Kane and IQ. So yeah, kind of where my background comes from in a nutshell.
and so what are you doing today? Like, I mean, talk to us about kind of some of this. Obviously, marketing is a big platform, right? It's a big umbrella that things fall under. There's a constant shift and a change with not just strategies, but product types. And who and how do you basically advise your clients?
Yeah, my bread and butter are multi-location. So my typical client
Okay.
has 5 to 7 locations, growing quickly. They're spending quite a bit on marketing. They maybe don't have a full-time marketing manager. So that's kind of who I work with most. I really only need about 5 to 7 clients, and then that's my business right there. So I work with a handful of people at any time. I do work with pre-launch and single location operators. Pre-launch has its own unique set of challenges that Jamie knows very well. I'm sure you do too, Gio. And then the single locations are they're fewer now that I focus more and more on the multi-location, and that's kind of where really my wheelhouse is helping them scale and expand. And
Would you call yourself like an outsourced CMO?
I don't like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's originally I was kind of positioning it as a fractional sort of CMO role.
Okay.
So that's kind of the best equivalent to it. It's for a fixed fee. I help clients make decisions. I'm like, look, here's my fixed fee. If you need a web designer, I've got several. Here's 6 to choose from. I'll recommend 2, and I don't mark up their time. I don't implement anything. If you need a ads person, an SEO person, a writing person, so on and so forth, I kind of bring a roster of people, and I recommend them the direct relationships with the client, and eventually I can kind of walk away, and then the business has all these team members that are independent, and that way they don't have to like fire a whole agency if something's not working and then restart with someone new. It's very much component pieces that are highly vetted and very good at their job. And many of them are specialists now. You mentioned meeting Taylor at the dog park. So he now specializes in co-working as a writer. So like, yeah, over time, all the specialists and contractors and agencies that I bring in to do some of the execution work, they become specialized as well. And eventually I can go on and the client's left with a good system that they can run. They can actually measure things and hold people accountable and know when things are working. And so it is broad, Gio, and I do cover the whole gamut. Because I'm not the one doing the execution work, I don't have to be a practitioner in all those different areas, but I do have to know where to spend the money, where not to spend the money, what things to work on, who to hire, how to hire. It's kind of like when you're building a building, right? Someone has to be the one to help you navigate all those decisions because there's many, between furnishing and painting and the construction, the whole 9 yards. So that's kind of what I help my clients do.
So I find this interesting, and same with Jamie's, and I think this is a great example is, so there's people that step in and they teach and they prepare a company or an individual to be able to run through a process, and then they step out once they stabilize them and let them keep running it. So is that what your goal is to step in, advise, and then move on? Or are you a constant stream of meetings and strategizing on a monthly or bi-monthly basis or whatever? I mean, kind of what's your preference, and how do you typically operate?
Well, from the beginning, I try to make myself redundant. So I get the client set up with their own Google Drive, their own notes, their own stuff. And so right from the beginning, I'm like, I don't want to hold the keys to anything. I don't want to be the person who signs in, and my account is behold. Like, you have to get me, when you leave. Everything is in the client's world. And the bigger clients tend to stay with me for quite a long time. IQ stayed with me for many years. Launch Workplaces is someone I've worked with since 2019. And there's a whole roster of people that stay with me. Typically, it's about 2 or 3 years for the bigger folks. And then at some point, they get big enough that they can hire an in-house person. I help get them set up with everything, and then they run it. The smaller folks tend to be like, we can work with you for 6 or 8 months. I helped turn a lot of people around during COVID and get leads flowing again. And we work on offers and all kinds of things to really change fundamentally the path they're on. And then post-COVID, it's been different strategies. And so with smaller businesses, it just doesn't make sense to keep me around forever. So right from the beginning, I'm teaching them, like, here's who you work with. Here's how you do these things. Here are the types of offers you're going to do. Here's technology we need to set up on your site. Here's the changes we need to make to your site. And then I go away and I'm around if they have questions. Some of them will retain me on a kind of as needed basis after that. But certainly my goal is not to keep anyone longer than they need me.
So you're essentially working yourself out of a job.
If I'm doing my job right, my main mindset is advocacy. So it's kind of like the world is complex. Business owners have tons to figure out and do. So as long as I'm looking out for your best interest, then my heart's in the right place. I'm aligned, even if that means, look, we're kind of good here. You don't need me anymore. So I do work myself out of a job, but I also add more value than I charge pretty much across the board. And if I'm not, then I either will work with the client to come up with a lighter engagement or to say, hey, like, I think you're done here. And so, yeah, clients keep me around for various reasons, but in many cases, it's because marketing is dynamic and you just, like, it's changing all the time. And 1 minute you're full, the next minute you're not getting leads. And so there's a lot of pulling of strings that needs to happen. And they're not short-term fixes necessarily. Some of them require big investments, right? Like GWA needed a new website, I think in 2018 or 19 when I was working with you guys. And so like it's an evergreen problem. So I just stick around as long as that problem is at hand until people are good.
I mean, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's so much value in your role because one of the big challenges, and I'm sure this is exactly what you see with your clients, is when you're scaling from one location to multiple locations, adding that like C-level layer is so hard. Like, it's like you start to need it, but maybe you're using your cash flow to invest in the next locations. You don't really, maybe you're not ready to invest full time, but to your point, like, you need to know where to spend the money. And even just to have that peace of mind of like, okay, here's someone, which I just love about the experts in our industry, is like, it's so niche and this is what you think about all day long. And you're looking at like what's working for others or what levers to pull. Because to your point, like, sometimes it can be really mysterious. Like, okay, this is not working. We don't, Why?
Yeah.
You know, what, or is this seasonality, or, what is this? It can be hard to
Yeah.
predict. And so just to have, an outside perspective and resource that can even just help with the mindset piece. But I do think it's so valuable because our industry is unique. And I love referring to people who just get it and do it, like Ruben, all day long. Because, and also, I think because you guys have this passion, right, for the industry, and you genuinely want people to do well, which I think is just hard to find in more generic agencies. Not that they're all, bad, but it's an important role because I think it's just the scaling is a challenging road. And so to have resources that you can pull in that add a lot of value is great.
Especially if you're opening, 20,000 square feet, maybe it's your second, third, or even fifth location. You may not even have really a documented playbook. So then, and the difference between selling 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 before you open, and then continuing a pace that is reasonable, and then, closing at 70% occupancy after the first, say, year or so, or slowing into being slower to start, not getting the space pre-sold and not getting traction with brokers or whatever the deal is. The difference is massive financially. So it's like, for the less than the cost of your cleaner, you have someone who helps you do this. And I'm single purpose. I barely do sales. I mostly do marketing, and I don't do ops. And so I don't do product, I don't do real estate. So it's kind of, it's tricky.
So talk to us about what you do outside of work.
Well, I've got 2 young kids, so that's pretty much, it's kind of like wake up, kids, work, kids. And then it's like 10 o'clock at night and I got to walk my dog. Beyond that, yeah. So really that's kind of the chapter of life. They're 2 and 4. So that's the chapter of life I'm in. And I love it. It's great. And I like that my work allows me flexibility and time freedom, which is great. And my clients are wonderful. So I'm not kind of staying up all night sweating about everything. It's a good chapter right now.
So what are their names?
Rory and Emma.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which one's the oldest?
Rory's 4 and Emma's 2.
Okay.
A boy and a girl.
So when you had Rory, how did it change your world?
Well, he was born in November of 2019, and then COVID hit around February. So I think just him coming into the world was dramatic, and then COVID hitting a few months later. So any one of those 2 things would have turned us upside down, turned us all up. COVID turned us all upside down in a lot of ways, and then I got very busy in that year, both out of fear and also out of demand. And then the government was putting stimulus money into the economy, and so a lot of companies had money that they needed to spend, particularly to get new members. And so I was both like exhausted and throttled full time with my business. And so it was a good thing, but also a very challenging, uncertain, time. And so they coincided. But yeah, it's overall, it's given me great motivation and great meaning, and helped me to keep my priorities straight, and what's important. So couldn't be happier.
Jamie?
I'm curious. I mean, yeah, I was just listening and thinking about, you mentioned you've changed as a marketer, but also the industry has changed a lot. I mean, certainly post-pandemic. And while you say like your single purpose, you do still, because you do marketing, have to think about like, I mean, I'm sure you're to some extent thinking about like what's selling and, what are the channels. And I mean, can you just talk about some of the things that you've seen, like the evolution that you've seen over the last couple of years, and how you're thinking about that or advising clients?
Yeah, it's really hard to know what's changed. What's constant that I noticed, and that's hard as a marketer, is that the product is typically baked before I get there. And so being a marketer, the 4 Ps of marketing are product, price, place, promotion. So it has a place that has a price which is adjustable, and the product is more or less there. You can tweak things to it, add different things. So those things are more or less baked, which is hard for me, because if the company isn't adequately positioned either in yesterday's market or today's market, then it's not going to be that competitive. And really, there's 2 ways to compete. There's many ways, but 2, like, you're either adding more value to the business, and whatever that means for that type of business you're trying to sell, or you're the lower price and or the lowest price option. You're kind of a commodity place to work. And it's getting stuck in the middle is where a lot of operators maybe are a little fuzzy. And those are the hardest ones to market, because really marketing should be, okay, we've developed a product, we figured out who we wanted to sell to, and we've developed a product that's perfectly suited to them. We're not trying to get everybody all at once, all kinds of people. So we have an idea of who we're trying to sell to. We're adjusting to that person. And then, yeah, basically it's like, how are we, and then we built a product on that. And is that product competitive or not? And if it's not, then people come to the website and they go, like, really marketing should be reporting on the facts, right? And the product should evolve with the customer. And so it's hard when the facts are that this is a medium good medium, low priced option. So really it's like the strategy is so fundamental here, and that's been changing. And as you're seeing, like people are looking for more and more flexibility. This is the flexible office industry. So you have some people that are going right down to pay by the hour. And I think that's all like, good or bad, whatever. It really depends on your strategy, but whatever it is, you have to really think it through and go all in on it and be either the most flexible or the best experience. And I think getting stuck in the middle is always tough. So we want to continue to like let go of the old ways of, hey, 24 months commitments, 12 months, like 18 months, like the firm ground we used to be able to stand on, especially in less competitive markets, and saying like, how do we trust that the revenue will be there if we're more flexible? But if we're going to try to maintain that long-term commitment and that kind of steadfast, like take it or leave it, then you better have a good product that's differentiated in the market, because otherwise the market's not going to go for it. And so that's where we're all kind of evolving toward where do you fit, and the landscape is changing. So it's different for everyone.
So
yes. Okay, go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, let's define that further. I mean, you're saying the landscape is changing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when I think of landscape changing, it's completely different than your idea of how the I mean, because I think about it from a real estate standpoint, obviously. Yeah. You and Jamie look at it from an operating standpoint. So for those that aren't on the marketing side, so let's further define that. So let's break it down into post-COVID world, right? Which is crazy to keep saying that because it's been 4+ years, right? So, but it's continued evolving because we were waiting for something to happen post-COVID, which has slowly been happening, right? And so you kind of want to bring us up to speed on kind of what your idea of evolving is currently. And we have a lot of new vendors and aggregators and all kinds of stuff that's coming into play. How do all those things affect you in this world?
They all happen simultaneously and in a very complex way that is hard to define for any market and makes my job really interesting. And so, I don't really have a good answer for you. I think it's like new players come onto the market and suddenly people have more choice. And so, like, for example, anyone who's ever had a business that's been in business for a little while, and to have WeWork or Industrious open right next door to them, knows that the oxygen gets sucked from the room for a little bit until they start to get occupied. They tend to lower prices, and that changes the price the market is willing to bear because they have reasonable alternatives for a certain price. And the co-working spaces that have a lot of demand and a good community have a bit of a moat. And so if you lack differentiators, literally new players in the market, especially if they have budgets, kind of come in and just really absorb a lot of demand. And then so you're kind of, it's the job of the entire industry, which is still happening, to create demand for flexible, to get people out of their houses and to show the benefits of it and to build something worth leaving the house for. And so a lot of the spaces that I see that are selling up the quickest are actually the ones that are quite amenity rich, that have things that integrate with work-life balance, that are not hard to get to for the majority of their target market, and serve them at a very personal level. One of my clients that is opening a new location this year, they're located in a retail setting above a large store. And so they have abundant parking. They're right in the neighborhoods that are really looking for that type of thing. They've got tons of additional amenities and really it's very compelling to join that space because there's catering to kids. There'll be a place where kids can be watched during the day. There's a cafe. There's like studios. There's all kinds of stuff. And so it's really like, that's an example of that person coming in and suddenly you were doing things the old way with no flexibility, really no amenities to speak of, they have fitness, like there's none of those boxes being checked. And so you have to either say like, we're either going to lower our prices here, or we have to add more, we have to beef up our offering, because at the end of the day, the market just goes where it either gets more value or it saves more in cost. So that's what I mean by the changing landscape.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I struggle with this in my work too, the baked piece of it. And it's making me think about like, how do you get, you're sort of tricky because you're working with multi-site operators. So they've made like a lot of decisions, although maybe they've learned some from the first or second location and the portfolio evolves, but it's like any business, I mean, to some extent, but things have been also changing. It's like you want people to sit down and be really strategic about their positioning, to your point, but most are not, right? Like entrepreneurs, like fire, ready, aim, kind of like, let's go, let's put this thing up and then we'll figure it out. And I struggle too. Like if you get a co-working space that's not profitable, I mean, Gio knows this, very, very well, it's probably because their product is baked and it's not a fit for the marketplace. And then when things change, I just did a podcast on the demand for on demand. It's like all of a sudden, to your point, it's like operators are like, well, but we don't want like this variable income. I mean, that's exactly what you were saying. And I'm thinking about that too. But that's what the marketplace wants. And it's like a fundamental shift to the business model. And how do you respond to that? And some of that is marketing. We're making, pricing or offer where you can take fixed physical space and kind of adjust that. But it's a tough business because it's not a service business where it's like, okay, yeah, let's just update the website.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like a lot of people, they have the building, the floor plan more or less baked, but then they're going after an enterprise market and an individual, consumer, and the individuals may want flexible, and the enterprise want a different kind of flexible. They also want it to feel like it's not in a co-working space, even if it sort of is with shared amenities, and yet the experience from front door to elevator to doorway isn't that like this is your office. It doesn't have that feeling, and so therefore it's like that one little tweak. If the elevator turned right and it just had your name on it, you might be able to sell that whole section of the floor. But now the floor plan's built and there's a split up and there's certain ways. And so it's really hard to build a product that looks good on paper and then to figure out who the customer is for that, as opposed to really saying like, what does this market want? Can we adequately serve them? Should we be targeting companies looking for an HQ, or should we be targeting companies that are looking for expansion space in a new market? Because they're very different kinds of companies. And so like these are the questions and the nuances that we have to try to iron out as an industry and figure out what does it mean to sell to like large space versus small and independent, and how do you build a business that speaks to the right number of stakeholders, and what are their psychographics? Because being in a space says something about you. The hotel you stay in, the beverage you hold at a party, the car you drive, they all say something about you, and we all don't wear the same things and do the same things. And yet we want everyone to buy the same co-working, like the same offer. And so that's where I think it's it's tough, but it has to be a market first approach. And it's really hard to do that blindly. It's really hard to know is there going to be enough of these people to support us? And it's tough. It's a tough business. It's a game of inches.
Totally. I know. Sometimes do you think, should I be in this niche? I think that sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody in the industry thinks that. Yeah, that's a pretty common.
We all do at some point.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, it's like it's high. It's high capital intensive, and the margins can be good if you're like those that are profitable are doing great.
Yep.
But they're differentiated. And usually, just like a restaurant, or I guess not all restaurants, but usually they've invested heavily in the space, and now they have a good product, and they're continuing to invest in things like events. For example, companies that have event space tend to need to spend less money in advertising than companies that don't, just because of the very fact that they're able to bring people in that are public, and then those people can talk and refer and be like, I saw this space. Yeah. We were at Juicy, the last conference. We were at a kiln. We're all in there dancing, having fun. People, obviously we're all going back to our homes, but events do a great job of creating word of mouth. And so if you haven't baked those strategies in early, you're like, well, we can't do events because it'll just disrupt our members and we don't have staff on weekends. And so that's it. And then you're like, okay, cool. You're going to spend more on advertising or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So let's kind of step back and give us an idea of what's your view, the macro view of what you see our industry and what's going on, right? Not just from a marketing perspective, but you have conversations with a lot of people. Obviously, there's a lot of marketing material out there. Kind of where do you see us today? Where do you see us headed from a macro standpoint? And then we'll dive further into a micro standpoint on kind of where you see opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get really macro, because I work with, say, a handful of clients, call it up to 7 at a time, and each of those have 7, 5, 10, 20 locations, and I get to see basically inside the month-to-month macro trends of their business in terms of leads, closes, and stuff. And what is really abundantly clear to me is, aside from the business strategy and the product, is that we're all kind of riding this economic wave. And so the same way you notice that in December, you maybe get a little quieter at the end of the year. January, you get quite busy. August, really dead, or leading into, or right as summer transitions from the school year to the thing, I think leads go quiet. And I notice that across all of North America, because most of my clients are North American, some of them are UK. So we just have to realize that like we have less control over the results than we think. So, and we're all riding this big wave. And if your product is good, meaning it's differentiated, it's higher quality or lower price, or to sufficient quantities of either of those things, more flexible, or whatever, then you'll have a better chance. You'll close more deals, and the difference between closing 20% of your deals or 40% or 30% of your deals is significant because your costs change accordingly. And so, just from a macro standpoint, market to market is quite different, but we're all riding this wave. So even when people are fearful of a looming recession, you see spending peel back a little bit just for a couple months, and then news changes. And so it's really been interesting to watch how like all these companies from East to West Coast are rising with a very similar tide. And I don't know if that's what you meant, but where the industry is going, I think the industry is getting more and more people to it. And I think people are realizing the writing's on the wall. I speak with commercial operators as well who are trying to get into flexible, and they can see it. They just haven't necessarily invested yet the full resources required to make it work. And they're not sure if they want to, because it's scary and it takes a different kind of work. But I think inevitably the market is going to go toward greater flexibility and or higher quality at the edges. And those things are going to be true. And co-working represents both of those things relative to traditional office space, in my opinion. You can get a better quality office more flexibly than you can get a traditional office. Like, it's easier to get a better quality office than you would do on your own. But you can still do it. You can still have the world's best office if it's your own and you go traditional. So I think the world is going more flexible. It's just a matter of time. And the whole industry is working on creating more demand for it by building awareness of the benefits. But we're on a big economic wave. And, but we can win on either side. In a recession, flexibility is the key. In an up market, people are looking for premium. That's the macro. I don't know if that answers it for you.
Yeah. So kind of slowly getting it more micro. So as you look at, obviously, we're seeing more and more brand differentiation, product differentiation, those things. So as you're seeing that, I mean, obviously you have people that are office intensive, you have people that are, more collaborative, open work. Then you got, the switch yards of the world that are membership driven and completely open, right? No private offices. Kind of what are you seeing out there? Are there people that are offering something like that are doing better than others, or kind of what's your overall experience?
So yeah, I mean, if you're going to be in that collaborative, community-oriented space, you better be committed to programming and have an experience that aligns with the psychology of that kind of a buyer, because they're just fundamentally different than other kinds of companies. And that what I've found with those kind of businesses, it's a kind of a winner-take-all market. So the ones who have the best community or programming tend to suck up that type of audiences quite well, and those that don't tend to struggle to develop the community and whatnot. And so, yeah, I don't know what was the second part of your question there, just on a micro basis.
Is there certain products that are doing better than others, right? I mean, obviously, as we were coming out of COVID, people didn't want to be in a room together, right? So the team suites and the open concepts weren't doing as well. Have you seen that kind of turn around? I mean, Jamie will tell you, she jokes around about all the time. She goes, if it were up to Giovanni, it would all be private offices that are 80 to 100 square feet, which is very accurate because it's what I know makes money, right? And so, and I'm not an operator. And so, for me, it's what's tried and true for 30 plus years. But then you start talking to the SIDS of the world, the Switchyard, all kinds of these other operators. Oh yeah, the Mullen.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be in between, right? I think the main thing is like, you can't be the most flexible and the most high end. In terms of things that are working really well, the ones that are close to home, that have high amenities, that are integrated with work-life balance and or health and wellness, tend to just be easier to sell. People, whether those amenities get used or not is a different question, but the appeal of them is high. And I think there really are two camps of people. Like, I can't be in a space surrounded by other people in a collaborative environment. My business doesn't function like that. You can hear my voice giving out because that's what I do. I talk all day.
Yeah.
So I need an office, and I think there's always higher demand for offices. Tend to be easier to sell unless you're in one of those co-working communities that have good community programming and just a good, interesting vibe, because no one wants to work in a boring setting and with a laptop, like a library. And so you have to just choose, like, what are you going to be, right? And both of them are just different games. And even within the office realm, are you going to be a cost leader where you're going to be efficient? Regis has done really well with that positioning. They're a very profitable, expanding business, hugs close to the essentials, right? They're professional, but they're essential, but they're in good spots. Or are you going to be more of that premium amenity fit out, But being stuck in between gives you you have all the downward price pressure without all the benefits of leverage, right? A company I worked with before, East Room in Toronto, they've got beautiful, immaculate space. They're opening the second and third locations now.
Oh
Space
my
looks
gosh,
like
I
it's
love
like
their
not enough.
space, by the way.
Yeah, amazing, right? And in a market, they have, without like I'm not going to speak for anything that they see, but they have leverage in a negotiation because it's like, okay, you can get office anywhere, but if you want it to look like this and have world-class art and vintage furniture and this, like, you're going to meet our terms and our prices because they have leverage, and there's enough of a demand for that premium quality. And so it's being stuck in the middle. So I would say like it's quality versus flexibility, which includes price. And that's actually what I spoke about at the GWA conference in 2019. And it's still true. And I think it's the people in the middle that are struggling the most.
Mm-hmm. I love listening to you think about these things. I told Gio, I was like, he spoke at the 2019 conference and you were, one of our highest ranked sessions. Gio, were you there in 2019 in DC?
Duh.
Okay.
Front row. I'm pretty
That
sure
was pre-COVID, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I was in the room when Bill Bennett decided to pick on people. If you know what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. Okay, got it. Yeah. I know you're making me think a lot about, I mean, it's positioning but again, you sort of after the fact, you're after the fact, like they've decided, unless you influence. I mean, do you have those discussions, like the strategic discussions about like, look, you might need to reposition? Do you play that? Do you have the hard conversations with owners?
Well, I do when they're expanding and choosing locations. And I'm like, okay, you gotta hold true to something. What's your strategy here? Whether we're urban, we're suburban, or we're amenity rich and higher end, in which case do you need to be in what market? Like that works for financial district and certain, wealthy suburbs. So I have those discussions to hold them true to themselves and say, like, I can't market you effectively across the scale if we can't own a position in the market, whether it's a part of your brand and your messaging. And so I will help shape it. There are people who have come to me in the past that said, Kev, I need a marketing strategy. And I'm like, looking at your business, you need a business strategy. Your product is no good. And there's no way for me to market this effectively because you have no pricing leverage. So unless you're willing to drop your prices to be very low, you're not going to be able to compete. So it's tough. It's really about how do you have leverage in a sales conversation, because the market is always pushing you downward price wise. Everyone knows this. People shop around and use other quotes
100%.
from other operators.
Yeah.
And you got to know when to stay true to yourself. And if you don't have that leverage, and this is an intellectual honesty thing, then you have to decide what you're negotiating, where your position is, and what you're going to do accordingly, price or otherwise.
We just did an interview with, what's Trent's last name? Oswald?
Oswald.
Yeah. Super interesting discussion. He is head of sales for Heinz, which is the asset owns, the building, or sorry, the company owns the asset, and the co-working is integrated. And he was saying, he'll tour folks, and he's like, he had a couple of really interesting things to say related to positioning. He said they'll tour folks and they'll do the tour and ask lots of questions. And sometimes they have to tell the tour, like, we're probably too expensive for you right now because they are a more premium offering. And they know that, and that's what they've chosen. And so they might say to a startup, like, hey, we might not be the right fit for you from a budget perspective. And no, we're not going to negotiate and drop our prices because this is our positioning, but come back, when you're ready, we'll be here when you want to move in.
Well, that's a company that knows themselves.
I love it. And he said, he was talking about, this is all, recorded. He was talking about Salt Lake City as an example, and we were all just there. And he said, that's a tough market because there's a lot of good operators. And I don't know if he was talking about Kiln, but he said, there are some good local operators who just are really good and they have a really great offering and have built really good communities, and people love their spaces. And he's like, that's not our brand. We're not a local brand. We're owned by, big institutional real estate companies. So they have to know like when they're going to win. And he's like, so we win on the fact that we're integrated in the building, and you can move up with us, and you can access the gym and the parking without having to change when you're ready for your spec suite. But it's like they know it. They know where they're going to play and what they're going to be good at and not good at. And they just
Well, they must, if it's working, then the product can back it.
Right.
You can be the toughest negotiator, but like, we don't budget prices. And the market's like sorry.
Yeah.
So if it's working for them, then obviously they found the right
Right.
combination of resources to put into it.
Yeah. And
Well,
he
it's
also,
interesting.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No,
I
go.
was just going to say, Trent also said, to echo your point, like the consumer's shopping, they're comparing. And
Yeah.
so they're going to know, right, to your point, like, are you premium priced because you have a premium product? And if that's not what they want, then they're shopping and they'll find their slot.
Yeah. And from a marketing perspective, it's so interesting because as we look at real estate and we think through a market strategy and everything else, we're like, how do we take a market and take market share, right? How do we open enough locations where from an operational standpoint, from a marketing and advertising standpoint, it makes sense. But when you look at Hines, I mean, aside from Houston, where they have 2 locations across the street from each other because it's their corporate city. They just opened up I think they've officially opened up in New York
They
at
just
Hudson
did.
Yard.
Yep.
You've got Mexico, where they're looking to do a second one in Mexico. I don't know if the second one's opened up yet, but it should be opening up soon. But it's not like they're going and dropping 4 to 6 dots on a map in a market, right? And so back to your point, it's not like you can't really sell a network in a sub-market like some of these operators do, right? Where, you can pop in anytime you want across the entire city or in multiple cities in a state, right? So they really have to understand what their brand strategy is and what they're trying to achieve. And luckily they've got a really good team with Annie leading it over there that understands that. So it's been good. So Kevin, what do you love about yourself?
Yeah, I love that I'm interested in what I do, and
Okay.
that every day, good or bad, it all stacks up toward something that I'm building toward that I'm happy about. So I think there's fundamentally, and I don't know if that's a wash answer or not, but there's fundamentally a difference between doing things that don't build to something, where every mistake and every pain, every failure and every success kind of doesn't matter. It's inconsequential, or it's just like, great, like I made that, I learned that lesson the hard way, and like I'll no use for that lesson again in the future. I'm lucky that most of what I'm doing is building toward things that I'm enjoying, and I think I'm good at it. So if I could give myself a compliment there, it's really just about, I love that I get to do work that builds
So would
toward things that I
passion
enjoy.
be the right word for that? You're passionate?
Broadly speaking, like I'm not like waking up going, "Ooh, this is great," but I think I get to tap into my highest skills, and I just love that I get to do that. And but yeah, and I love seeing happy people. And I think that's like when you get wins, then you're just like, that feels really good. And so I don't know. There's something about being aligned, I think, good, bad, or otherwise.
So those are really good from a professional standpoint, but what about a personal standpoint? What are the 3 things your wife would say she loves about you?
Other than my rugged good looks, probably she would say that I'm a good dad. And I think that's a big thing for me in this chapter. And I just love them. So it comes organically. And yeah, I think I try to see myself as advocating for other people. And I think so she'd probably say something along the lines of just looking out for people. And I don't know. It's really hard for me to kind of talk about myself like that, but appreciate you asking. And
well, I'm not done. I mean, we still haven't got the right answer. So you're a good dad. So what made you a good dad? Did your dad teach you how to be a good dad? Did you have other father figures that taught you? I mean, where'd you get that from?
Both my parents, unfortunately, were great and are great. And yeah, you definitely absorb the best parts of them and you try to mitigate the worst. And luckily they have very few faults. So I think really it's just like a genuine love, like for my kids. It's just like, I don't know. It's, I don't like read all the parenting books, but I just know, like, I just show up and I just love the hell out of them. And then
That's what the
everything works
parenting
out,
books say. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it? Okay, cool. Perfect. Yeah.
Basically.
So I just have fun, and just enjoy them. And I think that's, and it's like, it gives you a different meaning. Not everyone has kids, and I respect that it can be hard for people who have tried and can't, or just don't, I want to not over embellish that point, but yeah, it just puts things into perspective, and it's the only thing that really matters. It's kind of.
Yeah. Jamie read the book that says, let your child edit your podcast and be very, very careful what you say on the podcast. So
Good book.
Yeah. Yeah. Our neighbor dropped an F-bomb in front of her last night. And I was like, oh God.
She's going to hear it. She's going to hear it anyway.
No, she does, but she strongly dislikes profanity.
Yeah. Does she get that from her mom?
Unfortunately, no.
No, I'm Irish, so we have to, that's part of how Irish people communicate. So it's very much, you got to keep that lid on the pot, especially around the kids.
Totally. Yeah.
So, Jamie, have y'all watched, or you too, Kevin, have y'all gone to watch Inside Out
Wait,
too?
I
I've seen the
just
first one,
heard.
not the second
Yeah,
one.
the second one is the highest grossing movie ever.
It's
Really?
so good.
Oh, you loved it. I was listening to a podcast and the guy was like, I don't get it. I thought it was awful. But I think he
I
was
like
in
the
the
first one.
minority. Yeah,
The
me
first one's
too.
great. Yeah. Saw it in theater. I saw
Well,
it in
and he's
drive-in.
probably he's probably a guy that's not in touch with his feelings, right? And so that was the really
Oh, he is
interesting
British.
part.
It was a British guy.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
probably, yep.
Exactly.
Bottled up.
Yeah. But yeah, just the perspectives of anxiety and how if anyone's ever struggled, and we've all struggled with anxiety at some level, right? For some people it's an issue and something they struggle with constantly, i.e. us overperformers. And then there's people that, it has anxiety, apathy, boredom, and what's the other one? There's one more. And it was so interesting just to see, how they tied it, and almost like, you remember Shrek, where kids could watch it and they didn't really understand some things about it. It's the same thing, but you can relate so much. Like, I was just with Richie and Carissa Parsons the last couple days, the Venture X franchisees up in Northern Virginia, and we were talking about it. And she's like, "Oh my God, I got a 12-year-old daughter, and I could totally like you're going through the process of how that's processing in their head, and they're still learning their emotions." But it was really good. And the reason I asked that is just because you've got a daughter that's going on 45, and so it's just
Right.
interesting just how some people process through stuff. So I highly suggest watching the movie.
I'll have to go see it. Okay, well, Gio, flipping over to you, you're in Iceland. What did you see today? You sent me some incredible photos. Kevin, have you ever been to Iceland?
No, never, no.
So it was interesting because I landed at 9 a.m. and most tours start at 8 or 9 a.m. And I didn't just want to waste the day. Like,
The whole
my
day,
options
yeah.
were going on an hour puffin and whale watching tour. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do all day doing that? And so I literally I haven't slept in going on 48 hours. And so I stayed up on the entire flight trying to find a tour. And so there was a tour that started at 12:30 that was kind of a 6.5-hour tour.
Whoa.
Which, by the way, y'all can both imagine, I don't sit well on a tour bus. I was like, do I just rent a car and figure it out on my own? I'm like, no, I'm too tired to do that. And so we covered 3 things, but the problem is it took an hour and a half to get to the first stop, which was amazing. I'd been there to the geyser when I was here during winter, and the geyser is just amazing, right? And so, but you drive all the way out there and you literally wait for, it happens every 4 to 7 minutes. And you're like, oh, okay, that's awesome. What do I do now? That's sweet. I got a great video. But it's just amazing the way nature works. But seeing the backdrop as we're driving around on the bus and everything else. And then from there, we went to see those waterfalls that I sent you. They're just incredible, right?
Yeah, where was that? Here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy,
I mean,
that the people over there, these waterfalls are incredible.
yeah, it's insane. And it keeps going up. So I followed that little track on the left side to the top, and I got video from that side too. But it's just, I still remember being here during winter and being like, I can't wait to go back during the summer. And so tomorrow I'm actually doing an all day. It's like a 12-hour tour to go look at puffins, whales, and then going to some island and looking at everything on that island.
Wait, there's an island on the island, or an island off the island? Ooh.
Yeah. And so I'm going to do that. And then all the 4 guys fly in on Thursday. So I'm excited to spend some time with them. So we've got all kinds of fun stuff planned. And
Photographer, Gio?
I know.
I'm not.
Who took that photo?
No?
Did you
So just
take
like
that
an iPhone photo?
No, I enjoy it, but I'm not a photographer, right?
Okay.
It's funny. People laugh at me because they're like, they take a picture. I'm like, you totally cut off how did you cut off half the feet? I mean, how does that make any sense? Or they take a picture and they center the person, and I'm like, no, you're supposed to be off to one angle or the other.
Yeah.
I kind of have some of that perfection. I think I'd say it's perfectionism and artist to some extent. People ask me all the time because I wear all black in my hair and stuff. They're like, are you a musician? I'm like, yeah, I'd be in a lot of trouble. I could play an instrument or sing. I'm glad I can't do either. I mean, I already have enough problems with my keeping my ego in check and everything else without being able to sing like, Dave Matthews or something like that. But it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I enjoy it. And then, it's interesting because you can play with the editing and stuff, with the lighting and stuff, because there's some like that picture was cropped because I was trying to get as many people out as possible. And so sometimes you just, that's the beauty of all this stuff is, I mean, like that geyser, I cropped it majorly, Jamie, on the one you saw, but there's 250 people sitting around in a circle waiting for this geyser, all with the camera out. And so there was a couple of people, I'm like, just enjoy it. I'll send you the video. There's no point in all of us recording it.
Standing there with the, yeah.
It's just, we live in an interesting world where it's like we enjoy things through a lens rather than actually participating in it. And I think that's the fun part. Like when I'm mentoring these guys that come in, it's like, we're going to be present, right? We're not going to be here taking video and posting and all kinds of stuff. And I think that's part of what we've missed, right? That's part of what I love about coming together at GWA or Juicy or, whatever industry function is. We get to have conversations that aren't over a platform like this or over LinkedIn or just email or text, right? And so that's what I love about it, is just being able to engage and interact. And be able to learn from each other, right? And so that's what I love about this pod. I mean, I don't know if you remember, Jamie, when Jamie was like, "So how do you want to monetize this?" I'm like, "I don't. I just want to have cool conversation with people that matter in the industry, and we're putting out good stuff. It'll all figure itself out." And so it's crazy to think that. I mean, we're like what 115, 110, 115. I mean, over 2 years.
Wild.
It's flown by.
Yep, totally.
So, all right, going back to you, Kevin. So, are you coming to GWA?
I know that was going to be my next question. Will we see?
Yeah. I was just looking at hotels today, so I saw that there's
a deal
going on.
Tell me what hotels I should be looking at. Richie texted me yesterday. He's like, "Where are you staying?" I said, "Yes." So when you get in, I said, "Yes."
Well, the GWA has room blocks. They might have expired though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we just got so much stuff. And, I typically avoid, I think we still have room blocks. I'll send them to you, but I typically avoid that because you get sucked into bar conversations and I don't get my workout in. And it's just interesting. So this year, we're actually having it for the first time at an event venue as opposed to a hotel. So interested to see how that plays out.
I'm excited. I've never been to Phoenix. Never been to Arizona. I'm a Canadian.
And it's funny. I've been talking. Yeah. So, I've been talking to Megan. She's like, "So, where do we put Kevin? Is there a place for him?" And I'm like, let me have this podcast recording with him because I don't even know where to put him, if I'm being honest. I'm like, where does he fit in? So definitely, we're close to a fight. It's funny because Jamie, you'll get a kick out of this because you experienced it. But as soon as the schedule came out and people started seeing it, they're like, "Well, where do I fit in? Can I jump in?" And I'm like, "You've had 1 year to reach out and suggest stuff. And all of a sudden now there's nowhere to put you," right? Or someone I won't say who it is, but they reached out. They're like, "Hey, we're about to launch a new product. Can we have a session on it?" And I'm like, "No, there's no room for we're not, this is not a pitch competition.
Totally.
B, I don't even know what it is. Tell me what it is you're about to launch and I can see where you fit in and where there can be a conversation." Well, I'm not really sure I'm ready to release that. Well, I'm really not sure you're going to be on stage then.
Got to sign an NDA.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about it. And it's funny. Liz reached out yesterday before I flew out. She's like, "Hey, everything's looking really good. Congratulations. How's it going?" I was like, "I'm going to Iceland and I'm not answering any GWA questions." And that's not true. I've moved sessions 3 times today. Yeah, I've moved sessions 3 times today where people are like, "I fly out at 1:15 on Thursday. Can you move my session?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now? You're one of 2 panelists." I mean,
yeah,
it's just
the joys of event planning.
It's hard business. I used to do that, so not easy.
So it's funny. I'm like, I've got 6 months longer to go, and I'm like, no, I'm going to be doing content the next couple of years too, as past president, helping with everything along the line. So,
Okay,
but
I have to go talk 2024 co-working trends with the community managers.
all right, well, let's finish with that. Kevin, what are your top 2024 trends?
Listen to Jamie. She knows all the trends, and that should be good. You should be covered with that. Yeah, I don't have any 2024 trends. I'm not smart enough for that, but I know Jamie has some good ones. So
well, we've talked
maybe
about
ask Jamie that question
today for sure. So I'm going to take a couple nuggets to that next call.
Okay, if you had to break dance, what would you break dance to?
Maybe Everybody Dance Now. Is that song? You know that?
Yeah.
Is that the name of it? I think everyone knows this song. Yeah.
Speaking of, we'll end it on. And the reason I asked that is I saw. Did you see the Australian rapper or the Australian breakdance lady?
Yeah.
No,
of course.
She was absolutely horrible. She was absolutely horrible. I'll send it to you.
She's better than me.
Her story was, Kevin, I don't know if you saw it, but she basically said, these athletes train their entire lives to compete. I trained for 37 minutes and still got my time on stage. And they're talking about more about me than them after their entire lifetime of training.
She got all.
And it turns out her husband was part of who chose to put her on. So she got a free trip to Paris. And so there's all this stuff coming out about it, but it's
the Enneagram 8 for sure.
The chaos. All right.
Okay.
Ready to break.
Kevin.
Y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you both. Take care.